한국은 이 비트코인은 좀 별로 없고 비트코인을 좋아하는 사람은 시코인의 천국이다 이렇게 얘기를 하셨다는 얘기를 전해 들었어요. 어떤 의미에서 하신 얘기인지. 그리고 그 한국에서 그 저도 이제 비트코인 오렌지필을 먹이고 싶은 사람인데 하려면 어떻게 해야 되는지 그런 거 한번.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because I told my dad about it back in 2013, and I think there was one Bitcoin exchange here. It was Corebit, and I was like, oh, you should buy some using or tell our relatives and go buy whatever. And he didn't understand it, and he never ended up doing anything with it. But 2017 was when I really saw it kind of flip, and I'm sure you guys remember the kimchi premium in like April and something like that. That was sort of like this crazy run up, and then just Korean people went crazy for ICOs or whatever. And it really saddened me that they didn't understand the value of Bitcoin, and instead they were constantly looking at altcoins basically, and all the new ICOs that were coming out. There were like hundreds of ICOs coming out of Korea and so on. So that really saddened me because I was hoping that Korea wouldn't be basically shitcoin central, which it kind of ended up being for a very large amount of time. I know there are a lot of people that sort of got fatigued off of ICOs based on that. There were a lot of people that got burned on that, and they just sort of swore this area off. There's a lot of government regulation that came as a result of that. In a sense, it was kind of deserved because, altcoins essentially are trying to scam money from people. And I don't think it's really that different than a normal scam. But the other question that you had was, how do you orange pill people? And this is a very difficult thing to do. And a lot of people try by saying, oh, I'll give you a little Bitcoin using Lightning. Download this wallet. I'll show you. And oh yeah, you get some money. Yeah, see how wonderful Bitcoin is, and think that's how you orange pill people. That's not how you orange pill people. Almost always they'll go home and say, okay, well, all right, that's fine. They don't realize that this is a completely new monetary system. And the thing that I encourage almost everyone to really dig deep into is to answer the question, what is money? Because you don't understand it. 99% of people out there think they understand money because they use it every day, they pay for stuff or whatever, but they don't actually understand money. They don't understand how it works, how it's created, what happens to it, how the Federal Reserve works, how loans come into existence, how much money gets expanded and contracted. It's funny because I just visited, like literally this afternoon, I visited the Bank of Korea Museum. Which is free and near Myeongdong, and they have all of this stuff trying to explain what the central banking is for children and stuff like that. And it still doesn't really get to the real part, which is how does money get created? And they don't really answer that question in any of their panels. It's through loans. All loans in a fiat economy come in from nothing. It just comes out of nothing. People think it's from somebody's savings. That's not how it works. And once you really understand that and really understand the injustice of the current system, then Bitcoin starts to make sense.
그러니까 Fiat ruins everything. 당신 책을 읽어야 되겠네. 그걸 읽고 비트코인 픽싱 에브리띵을 깨치면 되겠네요.
Yeah. And that's I mean I make that argument from a Christian perspective and thank God for Bitcoin, but that's and that I think that's the right approach because it's speaking at another level because most people think of it as an investment, like it's like $500 in a stock or something like that. It's nothing of that kind. It is escaping the current tentacles of the fiat monetary system. And it's very important that you do that if you want to have a future.
정치인들이 그 비트코인에 관심이 필요하고 더 많은 국가의 화폐로 비트코인을 채택해야 된다는 그런 전망이 많다. 여기에 대해서 어떻게 생각하시고
음.
왜 비트코인을 국가 차원에서 채택해야 되는지 이 부분에 대해서 말씀해 주시겠습니까?
Yeah, sure. So the only country that's adopted Bitcoin is El Salvador, and I've been there twice. I was there in January 2022 and June 2022. So in those 6 months, I saw something absolutely astonishing. There were roads being built. Everything was just sort of improving at a very rapid rate. When I visited San Salvador in June, I saw bike lanes, right? This was a place that was just completely ravaged with gangs and shootings and stuff like that just a few years before. It was absolutely clean. Everything was vibrant. People were, doing business and stuff like that. So I started to ask questions about what had happened there. What is going on? So once again, the thing not to ask is, okay, like how is Bitcoin changing everything? It's how does fiat ruin everything else, right? Like, because that's essentially what happened to El Salvador. The thing to understand about developing countries is that there is a global US dollar hegemony. And that's been the case since Bretton Woods in 1944. So at the end of World War II, they created a new monetary world order. Before then, every country kept their own gold, and for balance of payments within countries, you ship gold to the other country and so on. They decided in 1944, towards the end of the World War II, that would no longer be the case. Part of it was because most of the gold was already in the United States. 3/4 of all gold in the world was already in the US at the time. And they said, okay, you know what? We're going to now be the rulers of everybody else. Instead of keeping gold in your vaults, you're going to keep dollars. And if you want to convert, then you have to give us dollars and we'll ship you gold. And that system lasted all of 27 years because in 1971, Nixon temporarily suspended that one escape route out of the
not
dollar.
temporary.
Yeah, wasn't it? He said temporary at the time. It hasn't been temporary ever since. But that system is what I call the dollar hegemony. The dollar rules everything else. And what I saw in El Salvador was the previous 4 presidents to Nayib Bukele were all sort of doing whatever the IMF said and so on. 3 of them ended up in prison for embezzlement. Nayib Bukele was the first one to say, okay, we don't want to do everything that the IMF says. We don't want their loans, and we're going to go on our own. And he looked for an alternative, and that's when he found Bitcoin, right? Now, what does the IMF do? Well, I think people here in Korea kind of understand because in 1998, there was that very big crisis where, basically you paid off the loans. But when you're under the thumb of the IMF, they control your budget. They basically tell you what austerity measures you have to take. So among other things in El Salvador, they told them this: you can only spend like 10% of your budget on infrastructure, roads, sewers, things like that everyone wants. They were like, well, we're a developing country. We need lots of roads, right? We need lots of sewers. Why won't you let us? Well, these are the austerity measures. We're going to control you. And getting out from under that system is what they were able to do with Bitcoin. And now they're saying, okay, we're going to pay back all of these IMF loans and everything else, but you're no longer going to be able to tell us what to do. And as a result, they're investing a whole lot more money into infrastructure. Downtown San Salvador was a ghetto a couple of years ago. It's apparently now very vibrant and so on. This is what happens is that for any country other than the US, you have to satisfy 2 masters. You have to satisfy the US and you have to satisfy your own voters. Most rulers end up satisfying the US and giving in to whatever they say or spinning it in such a way as to do whatever. This is like, say whatever about his human rights record, I get that. But he's doing what his people want, which is why he has a 90% favorability rating, right? And that's the big difference, and that's why I think Bitcoin is so important because it lets you get out from under this fiat system.
많은 나라들이 그 탈달러, exodus from 달러, 달러를 갖다 지금 하고 있는데 그 비트코인과는 어떤 관계가 있을까요?
So there's definitely sort of a lot of countries that realize the bad deal that the dollar hegemony is for them. So essentially what the US gets to do is they print money and they have a trade deficit with a lot of different countries, and they get goods back, right? So they give you printed dollars and they get back consumer goods and so on, from places like Korea and China and Japan and many others. That's been sort of like the deal, and many countries are realizing, okay, this isn't a very good deal. Like we're getting these useless inflating dollars. Why are we doing this? So you have the G7, G20 nations, and then you have the BRICS countries, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and many others that are sort of becoming. They're trying to be sort of the alternative. And as they're, I think Saudi Arabia is willing to trade in the yuan or something like that. There is sort of like a global movement a little bit away from the dollar. And it really started with the Ukraine war, because that was the first time that like just the dollar system was used to just punish somebody. They just took all of the assets of anybody related to Russia. And that basically means that Russia will never use the dollar again. So you don't have a global standard anymore. They're not going to trade in the dollar. They're going to demand something else. And as a result, what you have is sort of like this bipolar world. I think in sort of a world where you have that, I think Bitcoin sort of emerges as sort of like that bridge currency, so something that can be used in both. But ultimately, they're all fiat currencies, and they use this currency as a way to control. The Belt and Road Initiative from China is essentially what the IMF's been doing everywhere in the world, just China's version of it, and they're doing it to even poorer countries in Southeast Asia and in Africa and so on. So it looks like we're diverging into a bipolar world instead of a monopolar dollar hegemony. You have two poles, maybe with the dollar and the yuan or something like that. And at that point, Bitcoin, I think, emerges. I have heard rumors that the BRICS countries want to have sort of a settlement currency that's backed by gold, which would make it more attractive because honestly, all those countries are kind of authoritarian. So, they prefer the dollar, but if it's gold backed, maybe that changes the equation a little bit and gives them a little more weight.
비트코인이 글로벌 확대로 채택된다면 기술의 방향성은 어디로 향할까? 그리고 중앙 관리를 위한 확실한 KYC와 AML 시스템과 그리고 탈중앙화된 개인을 위한 시스템이 어떻게 조화를 이룰 수 있을 것인가? 그 부분에 대해서 얘기해 주십시오.
The technology I think is there already to a large degree. I don't think you need to worry too much about like Bitcoin changing, because it is very, very difficult to change. That's kind of how it's designed. The disadvantage at the national level is that you no longer have control over everything. And this is, I think, very scary to a lot of policymakers, because now you're giving all of these people freedom and you're not able to sort of deficit spend and things like that. And that's where it's kind of a difficult thing to sort of persuade a lot of policymakers, because like every country deficit spends, right? They collect only so much in revenue, and they spend way more than that, and they make it up by money printing. You have to pay the piper at some point, or you're essentially stealing from everybody else in order to fund that. I think like the KML AYC is KYC AML. It's all a part of this desire to control that a lot of policymakers have. I think they need a new sort of like attitude or philosophy of giving people freedom and letting them sort of innovate and stuff like that, because that's where the best things come out. Yeah.
Okay. 마지막으로 한국의 그 비트코인 커뮤니티에 한 말씀만 해주십시오.
Okay. Yeah, I think I understood that. Yeah. So the thing that I would like to tell the Bitcoin community here is that that you know, first of all, don't give up. Like everywhere I go in the world, and I've been to a lot of different countries, there's always a lot of shitcoiners, a lot of altcoiners, a lot of scammers. You know, you'll usually see CZ and Binance come in and, you know, make a big splash or something like that, and it seems like they have the majority, right? They have lots and lots of people or whatever. But the thing is, all those people are kind of in it for the wrong reasons, right? They're just there to trade or to make money quickly. They're not there to build anything. And all those people go away as soon as the price drops. They all go away. And and you know, even like Do Kwon, you know, he got caught in Montenegro or whatever. He's sort of like a prototypical example of a person that just, you know, scams other people. Don't give up though, because the Bitcoin maximalists in each country, there's even if it's small, they tend to grow and they tend to stay because they understand the importance of sound money. They understand the corruption of fiat money, and it's important that you stay strong and meet with other people that you know, have the same attitude, the same beliefs, and so on. And you know, typically, for me, it takes about 2 or 3 years before people really understand Bitcoin and come around to this view. But when they do, they stay forever, right? Like it's not just, okay, like I'm into altcoins and then next week, you know, I lost all my money, I'm done, or I doubled my money, I'm done. You know, they're not just trading or grifting or scamming or whatever. They're instead doing something that's better for humanity. And ultimately, I think, I really believe that that's what Bitcoin enables, is that it fixes a lot of the things that went wrong with fiat money. You know, we talked about as diverse things as, you know, the birth rate and like savings rate and people not being able to afford homes or whatever. All of these things are related. It's all monetary. And you know, recruiting more people into this fight, I think would be very useful. But I think people are starting to wake up because the financial system is already kind of unstable. There's a lot of inflation happening everywhere, and people are starting to ask questions. And if you know the right sort of resources and give these people the right resources to look at, they're going to become Bitcoin maximalists. And I believe that as quickly as Koreans went into altcoins and ICOs, you know, at some point there will be a flood of people that are Bitcoin maximalists as well. So I wish you luck in making that happen.
마지막 멘트 해주시고 엔딩 하겠습니다.
Okay, so like just goodbye or something?
Yeah, just anything you want to say for the Koreans.
Okay. Fiat delenda est. It's Latin for fiat must be destroyed.
네, 지금까지 그 한국의 대표적인 비트코인 맥시멀리스트 지미송님을 모시고 한국인은 좋은 시간을 가졌습니다. 오랜 시간 들어주셔서 감사합니다.